I might have set a new record as the most despised neighbor in suburbia when I shut off the water supply to 342 houses during a blazing Texas heat wave. But come on. They ran a pipeline across my property without even asking. So now I'm sitting back watching the HOA president, hair freshly dyed for $300, standing on my porch, her face bright red and pleading with me to restore the water. I just lean back, sip my iced tea, and get ready to tell you how the HOA president almost lost it. I never planned to be a rancher. My life was firmly planted in Silicon Valley, where I'd spent the last decade building software. It paid well and kept my mind occupied, a world away from dirt and fences. That all changed when I got the call about Dad. Heart attack. Sudden. He was gone by the time I got back to Texas. The funeral was a blur, a stark reminder of the distance that had grown between us. As the only son, I inherited the Blackwood family ranch, 15 acres of Texas countryside that had been in our family for 3 generations. It wasn't sprawling like some ranches, but it was ours, marked by old oaks, rolling hills, and a life-giving creek. Dad had worked that land until his final day, his hands testament to a life of honest work. My mother, Evelyn, at 68, was a force, but the physical demands of the ranch were too much. "Ben," she told me one evening, "your father always said this land would be waiting for you. Maybe it's what you need." Looking at the sunset paint the sky, something shifted. Maybe she was right. I decided to take a sabbatical, step away from the digital grind, and figure out the ranch's future. I didn't know that decision would immediately land me in the crosshairs of my new neighbor, Karen Higgins. Trouble arrived 2 weeks later in a pristine white envelope, an invitation to a welcome gathering at the Clear Creek Estates Community Center. Clear Creek was the upscale development built 5 years ago right next door. Dad had always been wary of them. Mom encouraged me to go, to start fresh, despite Dad's stubbornness. I reluctantly agreed. The community center was sleek, modern, utterly alien to me. Wearing my nicest jeans felt wrong amidst the cocktail dresses and calculated smiles. Karen, tall, blonde, and perfectly manicured, descended. "You must be Ben Blackwood," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Her voice practiced corporate warmth. She introduced her VP, Tom Jenkins, a retired attorney with sharp eyes. The pleasantries were brief. She steered me to a quiet corner with a view of their manicured grounds. "Mr. Blackwood," she purred, instantly deciding on Ben. "We were so sorry about your father. Quite a character." The word hung in the air, clearly code for problematic old coot. Then, the pitch. "Your ranch, while certainly rustic," she said, waving a dismissive hand towards my property visible through the trees, "has become a concern. Property values, you understand. The appearance—" Tom nodded solemnly. "We'd like to make an offer." She quoted a figure insultingly low, barely 40% of market value, acting like she was doing me a favor. I took a slow sip of water. "Miss Higgins, I appreciate the interest, but the ranch isn't for sale. It's been in my family for generations." Her smile tightened. "Ben, sentimentality is sweet, but be practical. You're a tech person. What will you do with all that land? Our offer is generous considering its state." The condescension was palpable. When I firmly declined again, her eyes hardened. "Think about it, Ben. Being neighbors can be easy or difficult. I'd hate for us to get off on the wrong foot." The veiled threat was unmistakable, a taste of the entitlement and malice beneath the polished surface. Driving home, I felt a knot of unease. What had Dad faced? Mom showed me his file. 15 code violation notices from Clear Creek's HOA in one summer for excessive foliage, unsightly equipment. They had no legal standing over us, but it was clear harassment. "They started friendly," Mom sighed. "Then, less so. Your father wouldn't be pushed around. Now they think they can push you." She looked at me, worry mixed with hope. What are you going to do? I knew I had to fight. First call, Anya Sharma, a sharp real estate attorney friend from college. Anya reviewed the notices. Textbook intimidation, they have zero authority. But she warned, HOAs can make life extremely unpleasant. Document everything. And Ben, check your fences. Property lines get misunderstood. Her warning was chillingly accurate. Weeks passed. I fell into ranch work, physically exhausting but grounding. I started noticing the creak, the boundary lines. Then the hum, a faint rhythmic sound near the southern fence. Checking the fence line one morning, I saw it, freshly moved earth. Following the disturbance, I found a new pipeline, buried but visible, snaking from the creek on my land towards Clear Creek Estates. They were stealing water. I called Anya immediately. She arrived with a surveyor. The pipeline was well inside my property. Blatantly illegal, Anya snapped, taking photos. Trespass, unauthorized infrastructure. What's it for? Water, I said, the realization hitting me. The creek fed the aquifer. They'd tapped it for their lake, their irrigation. Texas water rights are complex, but this isn't. No easement, no permission, no compensation, it's theft. That afternoon, I went back to the lion's den, Karen's office. I placed the photos on her desk. What's this supposed to be? She asked coolly. An illegal pipeline you installed on my property, I stated. Remove it within 48 hours or I file trespassing charges. She picked up a photo, a small, disbelieving smile playing on her lips. That's a serious accusation, Ben. We have all proper easements for our water infrastructure. Perhaps a surveyor's error? I slid my survey report across the desk. No error. It's 27 feet inside my line. You stole water, Karen. You damaged my land. She glanced at the report, her eyes narrowing, the smile gone. These matters are complicated, Mr. Blackwood. Our development has certain water access rights that predate your ownership. If you pursue this aggressively, you'll find yourself in protracted legal battles that could take years. It's not worth it. The threat was overt now, a challenge. 48 hours, I repeated, standing. Proof of easement or removal. As I turned, she said, her voice low and venomous, You're making a mistake, Ben. Your father understood how things work around here eventually. So will you. You don't understand this place. Leaving, a nervous man, David Lee, stopped me in the parking lot. A Clear Creek resident. He told me about the $300 quarterly water system upgrade fee charged for the past year, supposedly for water independence. Residents were asking questions. No one knew where the money went. It was clear. Karen was funding her water theft operation by charging her own neighbors for it. Anya's investigation confirmed zero record of any legal easement or permit. Clear Creek had simply taken the water, assuming Dad wouldn't fight, or I'd be an easy mark. They were stealing water and defrauding their residents. This isn't just trespass anymore, Anya said. This is potentially fraud and serious money. We needed more evidence of ongoing theft and their involvement. I installed high-quality security cameras disguised as birdhouses along the property line. 3 days later, they paid off. At 2 a.m., Bill Davis, Clear Creek's facilities manager, and a crew crossed onto my land. They were upgrading the pipeline connection at the creek. The damning moment. Bill on his phone. Yes, Miss Higgins, we're upgrading it now. Should increase capacity by 30%. The old man never noticed, and this new guy won't either. Direct evidence of Karen's knowledge and command, and her contempt for me and my father. Anya filed for an injunction immediately, citing continued trespass after notification. But Karen wasn't waiting for court. Being challenged, especially by the tech guy she clearly underestimated, seemed to push her over the edge into increasing irrationality. While the injunction crawled through the system, her psychological warfare escalated. Rumors became absurdly specific. I was building a hazardous waste dump, a massive Bitcoin mine that would drain the aquifer. A county inspector, Frank Riley, showed up unannounced, citing anonymous complaints about unauthorized structures and noxious odors. He found nothing, but the message was clear. Karen had connections and wasn't afraid to use them to make my life hell. Then came the official trap, an invitation to address the Clear Creek HOA board about environmental concerns from my property. It was designed to corner me on their turf. I went with Anya and my trusty recorder. Karen had filled the room with agitated residents. She launched into a presentation using carefully selected photos, making my ranch look like a junkyard, highlighting perceived fire hazards and pest breeding grounds. As you can see, she declared, gesturing dramatically, the current condition presents a clear threat to our community's aesthetic and safety. Mr. Blackwood, she turned to me, her face a mask of false concern. Perhaps you could explain your plans to address these issues and clarify those concerning rumors about your intentions for the property? I stood, feeling the hostile stares. Thank you for your concern, Miss Higgins, I said, my voice calm and steady. I'd be happy to discuss legitimate community issues. However, I'm more interested in addressing the illegal pipeline your HOA has installed on my property, the water you're stealing from me without permission, and the $300 per quarter you're charging residents for water you are, in fact, stealing. A collective gasp filled the room. Absolute silence. Karen's face contorted in shock and fury. Tom Jenkins rushed to the microphone. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Blackwood. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. I have video evidence, I cut across him, raising my voice slightly so everyone could hear. Of your facilities manager expanding the unauthorized pipeline 3 nights ago on a call explicitly confirming Miss Higgins' instructions. I'm happy to play it right now, along with the survey showing it's on my land and documentation of your special assessment fees. The room erupted in murmurs. Residents exchanged shocked glances, turning questioning eyes on Karen. This wasn't what they'd been told about their extra fees. "This meeting is adjourned!" Karen shrieked, banging her gavel repeatedly, her face a ghastly shade of purple. But the residents blocked the exits, demanding answers from her about the pipeline and the fees. Anya and I slipped out in the pandemonium, leaving Karen to face her own infuriated community. We had planted the seeds of doubt and rebellion. Karen's response to losing control was immediate and terrifyingly personal. She became completely unhinged. That night, men in hoodies poured something corrosive into our tractor's fuel tank. Our mailbox was smashed again. Then, the spray paint across the front of the house. "Sellout hillbilly." Mom saw it, and her face hardened. "Your father built this house with his own hands," she said quietly. "No jumped-up real estate agent is going to run us off." Sheriff Brody took a report but did nothing. "Look, Ben, I need hard evidence linking them directly to the vandalism," he hedged, avoiding my eyes. David Lee called later, whispered, "Brody's department gets big donations from the Clear Creek Fund. Karen owns him. Be careful, Ben. She's completely unhinged." My sister, Chloe, a hard-nosed investigative journalist, arrived from Austin. "You've been reacting," she said after seeing the vandalism and footage. "Time to go on offense. We need to hit her where it hurts." She started digging into Karen's history and HOA financials, finding a pattern of intimidation tactics. Then, the bomb. She found a supposed water access agreement between Clear Creek and Blackwood Ranch, dated 2 years prior, bearing what looked like Dad's signature. "This is forged," I said instantly. Dad would never have agreed to this. Anya confirmed the signature looked highly suspicious. "They made this as a backup," Chloe deduced, "when they realized you weren't selling easily. Now we had trespass, theft, fraud, a pattern of intimidation and forgery. Then, an unexpected turn. Chloe found a notice from the water district. The headwaters of our creek were for sale, an auction in 30 days. "Whoever owns the source controls the flow," Anya explained. "If Karen buys those rights, she can legally cut off your access or charge you." Chloe grinned. Then we buy it first. Mom nodded, her eyes firm. Do it. Your father would say the same. Buying the headwaters required secrecy. We created an LLC registered to Anya's office. We spoke to George Thompson, the water board chairman, who despised Karen's attempts to manipulate water access. He gave us details on the bidding process. We submitted our bid. We were the only ones. For $45,000, I owned the rocky hillside that was the source of the creek. It seemed worthless, but it was the ultimate leverage. We kept the ownership quiet under the LLC name. George told me Karen found out the headwaters were sold and was furious, demanding to know who bought them. He just told her public records would update. Her frustration at not knowing who defeated her on this was palpable. Karen's reaction to losing the headwaters was immediate and incredibly brazen. She doubled down on the intimidation. Mom faced open hostility at the grocery store. Then, the unthinkable. Bill Davis and his crew showed up at the property line in broad daylight, with Sheriff Brody standing right there. They started cutting the fence and damaging the land to expand the pipeline again. "This is private property!" I shouted, my voice tight with fury and disbelief. "You're trespassing, destroying my fence! That's a crime, Sheriff! You're letting them do this!" Brody shifted uncomfortably, refusing to meet my gaze. "Now, Ben, there seems to be some paperwork confusion here. Clear Creek has documentation showing they have access rights until a judge sorts it out." He gestured vaguely towards the forged document. Bill Davis smirked at me over the sheriff's shoulder. Seeing the sheriff complicit, allowing open destruction and theft on my land, something inside me snapped. If law enforcement was compromised, I had to handle this myself. It was time for the nuclear option. "We own the headwaters now," I told Anya and Chloe. "What can we legally do?" Laura Chen confirmed. "As source owner with prior appropriation rights, I could regulate flow for management and conservation, especially with documented theft occurring downstream. I couldn't be malicious, but I could restrict flow to monitor or perform maintenance." The plan: install a control valve at the headwaters. We hired a water systems engineer. We filed all the necessary permits for water flow management infrastructure, notified the county, everything legal. It cost $26,000, a significant sum, but it was the price of justice and leverage. Before activating it, I sent a formal certified letter to the HOA board detailing the illegal pipeline, documented theft, forged agreement, and my ownership of the headwaters. I demanded immediate removal of the infrastructure and proposed negotiating a legitimate water access agreement at market rates, giving them 72 hours. Karen's response via her attorney was a furious cease and desist letter, referencing the forged agreement and threatening countersuits for economic damages. Empty bluster, Anya and Laura confirmed. The 72-hour deadline passed with no move to remove the pipeline. It was time. On that blistering Tuesday morning, as the temperature climbed towards 103 degrees, I sat on the porch, the remote control in my hand. I pressed the button. The effect wasn't instant. Clear Creek had some reserves, but by afternoon, the impact was undeniable. The fountains in the entrance sputtered and died. Sprinkler systems went silent. By morning, water pressure was drastically low, some homes completely dry. Clear Creek Estates was experiencing a self-inflicted drought. Chaos erupted. Local news vans descended. Karen, ever the performer, gave interviews, crying crocodile tears, painting her community as victims of my water terrorism, a cruel, vindictive act by a neighbor refusing to cooperate. She carefully avoided any mention of the pipeline or the stolen water. That evening, Chloe launched our counteroffensive. She released her video package, time-stamped footage of the illegal pipeline being installed and expanded, Bill Davis confirming Karen's orders, expert legal analysis on water rights and trespassing, copies of the forged document, and interviews with Clear Creek residents questioning Karen and the fees. The narrative fractured. This wasn't about a cruel rancher. It was about a corrupt HOA stealing resources and defrauding its residents. Day 3 brought it all to a head, returning us to the opening scene. Karen, bullhorn in hand, leading a crowd to my gate. Some were angry, others looked uncertain, having seen Chloe's reporting. "Turn on our water, Blackwood!" Karen shrieked, spittle flying, her face a roadmap of rage and desperation. "You can't hold an entire community hostage!" I walked to the gate, Mom and Chloe behind me, Chloe filming. Sheriff Brody was there, looking tense. "This is private property," I stated calmly, my voice amplified slightly by Chloe's mic. "You're trespassing! This is harassment!" Karen stepped forward, radiating pure fury. "You are destroying our community! People will remember who did this!" "I'm managing my water resources, Ms. Higgins," I replied, meeting her wild gaze. "The water your HOA has been stealing through an illegal pipeline you installed without permission." I paused, letting the heat, the dry air, and the visual of the dry lawns behind them sink in. "Have you told your neighbors they've been paying $300 a quarter for stolen water? Or about the forged document with my dead father's signature you created to justify your theft?" A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the crowd. Residents stared at Karen, then at me, then back at Karen. David Lee's voice cut through the tension. "Is that true, Karen? About the stolen water? The forged document? What have we been paying for?" Others joined in, their anger shifting from me to the woman who supposedly led them. Karen's face crumpled, the mask utterly gone. She stammered, tried to deflect, but the questions kept coming. The confrontation she designed to make me the villain had exposed her completely to her own residents. Sheriff Brody, sensing the shift, stepped forward, looking relieved to end the spectacle. "All right, folks, this is a civil matter. Everyone needs to disperse." As the crowd broke up, some residents shaking their heads, others giving me cautious nods, Brody approached me. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, his tone entirely different. "The mayor's office called. They want a meeting tomorrow morning at City Hall. Both parties, 9 o'clock. He glanced at Chloe. "Looks like things got uncomfortable for Ms. Higgins." Karen stood alone by my gate, defeated, her empire of entitlement crumbling in the heat. She had pushed, threatened, lied, stolen, and ultimately self-destructed. She thought she could bully a rancher off his land and steal his water. She was wrong. And now the most hated neighbor in suburban history wasn't me. It was Karen.